Okay, so expect as cost function is going to be the most important thing that we are going to study in producer theory. So it is going to be one of those things that we carry forward to understand the equilibrium. So those of you who have seen the videos or attended the first lecture, I've told you what is the aim of microeconomics. The aim of microeconomics is to find equilibrium in the market. Find the equilibrium. Okay, justify that equilibrium exists and find what that equilibrium is going to be. So this is basically your Adam Smith's invisible hand theory. Okay, so we have all heard the invisible hand statement which Adam Smith made in Wealth of Nations, but he never proved it. So the idea is that we are going to look at uh, consumers, we are going to look at producers, and then we are going to put them in the market together, and then we are going to look at what's going to be the equilibrium. So the consumer, what is the function that consumer is going to optimize? It's his utility function. To optimize the utility function, the consumer puts demand on the market. Okay? And what is the function that producers maximize? They maximize their profits. But in order to maximize profits, the first thing that the producers need to understand is what is going to be my cost function. So what is cost function? Cost function is a concept that says that to produce any given quantity Q of any output, what is the minimum cost that you can do it in? So the cost function, basically it gives the minimum cost to produce any quantity Q given wage rate W and rental rate R. So wage rate and rental rate are the the prices for labor and capital respectively. So you want to hire some amount of wage labor, you want to uh, hire some amount of capital. So what's going to be the cost to? So for any quantity Q, what is the minimum cost in which this can be done? So suppose you are, let's say, a, a road constructor. So the government has opened up a tender to build 100 kilometers of highway. So you want to apply for this tender. Now, in order to apply for this tender, the first thing that you need to know is what is going to be the cost that you incur to build 100 kilometers of this highway. So that's why cost function is very fundamental to understanding the producer's problem. So imagine that the different ways to produce 100 kilometers of highway is this isopont Q. So this is your labor axis, this is your capital axis. So you can maybe hire a lot of labor and you can make it happen, or maybe you can hire a very good machine which constructs roads and you can use it. So as you see in India, you will see construction of a road happening with a lot of labor with very few equipment. But if the same thing were to happen in some developed country that like United States, they would probably use very sophisticated machinery. So the capital is going to be high. And there's going to be one person who's operating this machinery. So instead of hiring 10 people who are working with their way with handheld tools, these developed countries are going to employ sophisticated machinery with some skilled labor. So what is the difference between the two countries which is causing this thing to happen? That India hires more people and less capital, whereas United States Road Construction Agency would hire more of capital and less of labor. So the answer is hidden in this difference in wages and rental rate in different countries. Now imagine that you want to reach this Q equals to 100 units of construction or production level. So given any amount of expenditure that you do, right? So the objective problem of the producer becomes, so the objective problem of the producer is to minimize WL plus RK, which is basically the cost. Okay, so if he hires some L amount of labor here and K amount of capital for any point like this is going to be his cost, WL plus RK. So minimize WL plus RK such that production function value at L comma K should be equal to Q. Now, this is very similar to what we studied in consumer theory in form of expenditure function. In expenditure function, what we had was the consumer had to reach some utility level U0 in X and Y plane. The objective problem was to minimize PXX plus PYY such that utility at X comma Y should be equal to U0. So now this expenditure becomes WL plus RK. This this utility function has become production function, and the required utility level has become the required production level. Okay, so let me ask this to Kritika. Kritika, for the expenditure function, what used to be the equations? What used to be the equations for expenditure function? Hello, Kritika.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So can you tell me the equations that we used to solve? First of all, how many equations do I need? What are the unknowns, by the way? What are the unknowns?
So X and Y.
Very good. So you need X and Y. So there are two unknowns, so I need two equations. So what are going to be the two equations?
First, the utility is U0.
Very good. So utility at X comma Y equals to U0. So that's my first equation. Second equation.
So PXX plus PYY is equal to income.
There's no income. This is expenditure function. There is no income. Can anybody else tell the second equation? Anyone wants to jump in?
So U0 equal to PX by PY?
No, not U0.
MRS equal to PX
Very
by
good.
PY.
MRS equals to PX by PY. Okay, so it used to be the point of tangency. So a similar thing would happen here. A similar thing would happen here that you would also here pick a point of tangency, but now the function which defines the slope is going to be MRTS. So MRTS equals to price ratio. Price ratio is now W by L. So this becomes first equation. The second equation is going to be F of L comma K equals to Q. So as you can see, the equations are similar. Equations are similar here. MRS equals to price ratio. MRS equals to input price ratio. MRTS equals to input price ratio. Here you had utility equals to U0. Here you have production equals to Q. So the ideas are very similar. Yeah.
So is it MRTS equal to W by R?
Yeah, W by R. Sorry. W by R. My bad. W by R. Okay, so the ideas are very similar. So now that we have already dealt with expenditure function, we don't need to spend so much time with cost functions. So let us quickly do an example to see how to derive cost functions. But remember, in order to solve cost function, there are going to be two equations. MRTS equals to W by R, and second equation is going to be your production level at K comma L should be equal to your required quantity level Q. So with that in mind, let's do this example. Let F of K comma L be equal to under root KL, and wage rate equals to 3, rental rate equals to 5. Find the cheapest find the find the minimum cost to produce Q equals to, let's say, 16. Yeah, why not? Q equals to 16. So how do I do it? So the first thing is going to be MRTS. All right. So what is the MRTS for this function, Dhruv? Are you with us, Dhruv? Can you help me with the MRTS? Seems like Dhruv is not present. Okay, all right, Dhruv. Can you tell me the MRTS in chat? Okay, fine, no problem. Anybody else wants to comment on MRTS?
So it's L by K.
No.
K by L.
Very good. It's K by L, right? So you have to remember. So what are you differentiating with respect to in the numerator? That is going to be the key. Okay. So if I write it as del F by del K upon del F by del L, then I have to equate it with rental rate upon wage rate. But on the other hand, if I'm writing it as del F by del L upon del F by del K, then this becomes W by R. Okay, so whatever you're differentiating with respect to in the numerator, you have to write the input price of that thing in the numerator. That is what you need to remember, because you can't remember in terms of ki K numerator mein lena hai, L denominator mein lena hai. Don't remember it like that, because if the examiner does not give you K and L, then you are screwed. Okay, and then you'll be like, ये तो आया नहीं था, out of syllabus है, ये sir ने तो ये पढ़ाया नहीं. So that's how you do it. But ideally, what happens is we follow this pattern: labor in the numerator, capital in the denominator. So as far as these classes are concerned, I'm going to stick with this form of MRTS. Always labor first and capital next. So in this case, MRTS becomes equal to K by L. Okay, so this is going to be your first equation, that W by R equals to K by L. So W by R is 3 by 5. So this implies K becomes equals to 3 by 5 times of L. Now the second equation is production level. So this just says under root K into L should be equal to 16, which implies that K into L should be equal to 16 square. So that is, well, 16 square. I should have given an easier one. 225. 50.
So
6, right?
256.
Yeah. So KL is equals to 256. Instead of K, you can write 3 by 5 L. Instead of K, you can just write 3 by 5 times of L. So this becomes 3 by 5 times L square. So L square becomes equal to 256 times 5 by 3. So L becomes 16 root 5 by. So once you find out L, you can make this substitution to get capital. So capital would be equals to 3 by 5 times 16 times under root 5 by 3. So that is going to be 16 root 3 by 5. So this is your capital. So I have done with this example. Now I'm going to change the values. Let me keep these numbers. The values for U are going to be 2, 3, and make this as 6. Okay. So wage rate is 2, rental rate is 3, and total quantity is 6. Everything else remains same. Tell me the optimum amount of capital and labor. Okay, final step. Final step is just WL plus RK. Now that you have L and K, final minimum cost here is W times, what is W? W is W was, in my case, it was 3. So cost is going to be 3 times L. L is 16 root 5 by 3 plus 5 times 16 root 3 by 5. Right? So that this is 16 root 15 plus 16 root 15. So that is 32 root 15. So that is the final answer for the example that I solved. For the ones that you solve, give me the final value of optimum capital, labor, and minimum cost. So I'm going to wait for everyone to do this. So yeah, so India and US are going to pick different points because the MRTS of India and US are different, and India, since its W by R is smaller, it picks a point where MRTS is smaller, so it is going to pick a higher amount of labor. So the labor employed by India is going to be more, whereas the labor employed by US is going to be smaller. So this is the same thing. Now we have Lagrangian. So we solve using Lagrangian, but we have done this when we were solving for expenditure function. So it's the same thing. Now MRTS becomes, MRS has become MRTS, production function, utility function has become production function, and so on. So then you have expansion path of the firm. So the expansion path of a firm is going to be the locus of cost minimizing tangencies. So for different isoquants, what are going to be the optimum production points for this different for a firm? So suppose we have different isoquants here, right? So these are different isoquants here. So for this isoquant Q1, this is the ideal point. For Q2, this is the ideal point. For Q3, this is the ideal point. Similarly, for different levels of quantity, you have different ideal points. So when I connect all these ideal points, what I get is the the expansion path. So let me ask you a question. The expansion path of a firm does not change if option A, wage rate doubles, option B, rental rate doubles, C, W and R both double, option D, all of the above does not change. So none of the above. Basically, it will change if any of these things. So what is going to be the answer?
So C.
Okay, so Vinay is saying C.
C when both doubles.
Okay. Very good. It is C. Because you see, one of the equations is MRTS equals to price ratio, right? So equation 1 is MRTS equals to price ratio. Now, if both of them double, then MRTS value does not change. So MRTS remains same. So you'll continue to pick the same point that you were picking earlier. Okay, so the tangency point remains same. So for different isoquants, you are going to continue picking the same point. So in C, the expansion path will not change. Look at A, by the way, when wage rate doubles. Okay. So when wage rate doubles, what will happen to the expansion path? Will it shift to left or will it shift to right? If wage rate is going to double, whereas other things remain same.
So it will
So
shift
to the right.
Some of you are saying to the left, some of you are saying
So
to the right.
to the left.
So when
Anybody
wage
saying
rate
to right?
will when wage rate will double, the producer will move to more labor as it will be most cost effective for them.
So when labor becomes costlier, the producer will hire more labor. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, when capital, yeah, and labor becomes costlier, the producer will have more capital. Yeah.
So you're saying conflicting things now. You have to
No,
just give me one answer, Kritika. Will the expansion path move left or right?
So to the left.
Okay. Does anybody here say it's going to move right? No, it's not. Great. Okay. So it is going to move left. Give me a moment. There's an issue with my tablet. Let's solve it. So yeah, so when wage rate doubles, your ideal points are going to shift to left. Okay, so your MRTS now becomes double. So you're going to pick high slope points. So it's going to look something like this. So the expansion path will move towards left. The idea is that if wage becomes costlier, you hire less of wage, less of labor. Okay, so that general thing will hold. Now that you know how to find the cost function, we are going to look at what can you do from the cost function. So suppose you have a cost function like we have here. Okay, so we have this cost function 2q root WR. Okay, so let's say the cost function is 2q root WR. So the average cost function is going to be C by Q, which is going to be 2 root WR. And the marginal cost function is going to be DC by DQ, right? DC by DQ, which is going to be equal to 2 root WR again. So when I do this marginal cost, I'm going to assume that wage and rental rates are not going to be affected by the quantity that you produce. Okay, so here I'm making the assumption. So this carries forward from the extension from yesterday's class that when you're differentiating with respect to Q, you are going to assume W and R are constants, which mostly holds true. It will not hold true if you're talking about a monopsonist. Okay, so W will be a function of quantity for a monopsonist. Well, who's a monopsonist? A single consumer. So a monopsonist is somebody who's the only person hiring labor. Let's say. Okay. So then how much he produces directly affects how much labor he hires, which directly affects the wage rate in the market because he's the only person who's hiring people. Okay, so that's going to be an extreme form of case. We are going to look at problems like this also to understand how this works after we look at monopoly and monopsony, all those cases, but not for now. Right now, the important thing is find cost function, and from here find marginal cost function. Marginal cost function is the most important thing that we are going to use. So in most problems that we are going to solve, you will be given like a firm has this marginal cost function and then do blah blah blah, work out its equilibrium or whatever. So let's say these are two different firms who have some cost functions which look like this. Okay, so this is the cost function for one firm, and this is the cost function for some other firm. Now for firm one, the average cost function and marginal cost function are going to be horizontal. Okay, so they are going to be the same. Whereas for this firm with a non-linear cost function like this, the average and marginal costs are going to be different. Okay, so this is for a fixed or constant marginal cost case. And this is for the variable marginal cost case. So when the marginal cost is variable. So in case of variable marginal cost, you first draw the marginal cost curve depending on what is the slope at any point. So if the slope at this point is this much, then at this point, suppose the slope value is m. Okay, then at this point, marginal cost value is going to be equal to m. The value of marginal cost is basically the slope of the curve at any point. So your marginal cost curve will intersect the average cost curve in two important positions, this position and this position. So we have two important results here. Result number one is that at Q equals to 0, average cost equals to marginal cost. That is the first thing which is coming here. That at zero quantity, the average and marginal is the same. Because what is the definition of marginal cost? So what I'm claiming is at Q equals to 0, average cost equals to marginal cost. So the reason this is true is that marginal cost is defined as the cost of producing one additional unit of output. So it is a cost of producing one additional unit of output. That is marginal cost. And what is average cost? Average cost is cost upon quantity. Okay. So imagine that you are at Q equals to 0. So your cost is 0. You're producing nothing. Then you move to Q equals to 1 and your cost becomes, let's say, C0. So the marginal cost for this case is going to be equal to the additional cost incurred to produce this one additional unit. So marginal cost is going to be C0 minus 0. So that is going to be C0. And average cost is total cost C0 divided by total quantity 1. So that is going to be equal to again C0. So this is not by mistake that these two curves are starting from the same point. This is in fact a property. The other property is happening here. These are important things. Okay, so I'm mentioning them because I want you to understand them. I want you to remember. The second thing is at this minimum, at this quantity Q star where they intersect, the average cost is minimized. Minimum average cost. So average cost is at a minimum where average cost becomes equal to marginal cost. So when the two costs become equal, that is where you have the minimum average cost. Now, why is this property true? So I'm saying that average cost will have a slope 0 here at Q star. That is till Q star, average cost is going to be reducing. After Q star, average cost is going to be increasing. So the reason for this is that for all quantities less than Q star, your marginal cost is below the average cost curve. Okay. So the idea is that if marginal cost is below the average cost, if marginal cost is less than average cost, then average cost keeps falling. Like if average marginal cost is below average cost, then average cost keeps falling. Why is this thing true? So to understand this, imagine that you are waiting for your university results and you have obtained the result in 4 of the exams out of 5, and the average after 4 exams, A4, is let's say 80. Now, if marks in 5th exam are less than 80, then your aggregate average will fall. And if your marks in the 5th exam are greater than 80, then your aggregate average will be greater than 80. So the thing is that if your average after 4 exams is 80, then your total after 4 exams is 4 into 80, that is 320. Now, if 5th exam has less than 80, then your average will fall below 80. If the 5th exam's marks are greater than 80, then your average, then the total becomes higher than 400 and your average becomes greater than 80. But this part is not important. The important thing is that if the marks in the next exam is lower than your average, it's going to pull your average down. If the marks in the next exam is higher than average, then it's going to push your aggregate up. Can everybody understand this point I'm making? That as long as you get a mark higher than your average will improve. Whereas if you score below average, your average will fall. Is this part clear to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now that we understand this, I want to look at this particular graph. So as you can see in this graph, in this zone, marginal cost is below average cost. So average keeps on falling. Whereas in this zone, marginal cost is above average cost. So the average cost starts increasing. So this indeed is the point of minima, where the minimum point for average cost. So if the aim of the firm is to minimize the average cost of production, it's going to pick the point where AC becomes equals to MC. All right, then we have a bunch of other problems here, which you can do on your own. Find the average and marginal cost functions. So that shouldn't be hard. Okay, then we have this Shepard's lemma. Okay, now properties of cost function. First is homogeneity. So if all the input costs go T times, then the total cost also goes T times. Okay. So we have already seen that if all the input prices go alpha times, you are still going to pick the same bundle. Okay. So if, let's say, for producing some level of quantity Q, you were choosing some bundle A, suppose to produce some quantity Q, you were choosing this bundle A where MRTS was equal to price ratio. Then even after prices double, you will continue to pick this bundle A. Okay, suppose this bundle is LA amount of labor and KA amount of capital. So you are going to continue to pick this bundle if all prices go alpha times. It's just that the total cost now is going to be alpha W times LA plus alpha R times KA, which is going to be alpha times WLA plus RKA. Right, so it becomes alpha times initial cost C naught. So if all prices go alpha times, then your total cost will also go alpha times. Your bundle will not change the amount of capital and labor. It's just that the same bundle now becomes costly. Total cost functions are non-decreasing in Q, W, and B. This says that if quantity increases, or okay, in this notes, I have used V instead of R because some textbooks say rental rate is R, some say it is V. So there's some discrepancy here. So in the notes, I have used V. While teaching, I use R. I should actually rectify it, but please don't get confused by this. V is basically R. Sorry, V is basically R. V and R are interchangeable. So total cost functions are non-decreasing in Q, V, and W. So that's your second thing, that if either of these things increases, your cost cannot go down. It has to either stay same or increase. Now, some properties of total cost function carry over to average and marginal cost, such as homogeneity. So the idea is that if cost functions are homogeneous, then marginal cost functions are also homogeneous, and so on. But the idea is that if cost function is homogeneous of degree alpha, then the marginal cost function will be homogeneous of degree alpha minus 1. Okay, homogeneity as a property is not that important for us, so we will not do all the math related to homogeneity because that would be a separate lecture into itself. But it's good to remember if you can. Shepard's lemma. So Shepard's lemma says that if you have the cost function, differentiating it with respect to the rental rate will give you the demand for capital, and differentiating it with respect to the wage rate will give you the demand for labor. So this is Shepard's lemma for input demand. So suppose I have to find the input demand for these different situations. So how I can do it is I can just partially differentiate the cost function. So I've been given the cost function. So if I differentiate cost function with respect to V, what I'll get is Q by A, which is basically my amount of capital. And if I differentiate it with respect to W, I'll get Q by B, which is equal to labor. So let's look at this example. Suppose the cost function of a firm is given by this. So find the demand functions for input L and K. So give me contingent demand for labor and capital if this is my cost function using this Shepard's lemma.
So the demand for capital is Q by A and the demand for labor is Q by B. Oh, sorry, I did it for the other one. Sorry.
I want it for this one.
So the demand for capital is 1 by 3 Q times W by V to the power 2 by 3
1 by 3 Q times W
by V to the power
Okay.
2 by 3 whole raised to power 2 by 3 and the
Okay.
demand for labor is 2 by 3 times Q V by W to the power 1 by 3.
Let me know if anybody else has a doubt or wants more time on this. All of you are with me on this? I'm assuming now all of you are with me. So, can you now eliminate W by V in order to get a relationship between K, Q, and N? Basically, W by V appears here and here. So, I want you to eliminate W by V from both the equations. Basically, take W by V on one side, keep everything else on one side, on the other side, so that you can eliminate the other options and get the final result. Write it in the notes. K equals to 1 by 3 times Q W by V to the power 2 by 3 and L equals to 2 by 3 times V by W to the power 2 by 3. So eliminate V and W. So that's what I mean. Basically here what you can write is W by V whole to power 2 by 3 is equal to 3K by Q, and here you can write W by V. Basically what you get is V by W to power 1 by 3 is equals to 3L by 2. Okay, then you can invert this particular thing. Right, so this thing will become W by V is 2Q by 3L, and then you can take a square on both sides. Right, so now the left hand side in these two equations are same, so the right hand side needs to be same. So 3K by Q must be equal to 2Q by 3L whole square, which implies 3K by Q must be equal to 4Q square by 9L square. So what you get is 27KL square equals to 4QQ. So this becomes 27 by 4. So Q becomes equal to 27 by 4 times KL square whole to the power 1 by 3. So we have actually derived the production function from cost function, which by the way is possible here only because this production function is homothetic. If it were not homothetic, then you could not have eliminated V by W like we did. Okay, so because because then V and W could not have been eliminated in such an easy manner. So generally speaking, from production function, you can always go to cost function, but you can come from cost function to production function only in certain situations where you can basically eliminate W by V easily. W and V easily. So we have eliminated W and V, so we could get some relationship between Q, K, and L. So this is a good example. They could ask you in the subjective part maybe, or maybe even in the objective part. They can ask you, if this is a cost function, tell us the production function which gives this cost function. Now, obviously, if they give you 4 options on production function, you cannot solve the cost function for each of them. That is going to be more difficult. It's easier to use the cost function and arrive at the production function. That would be an easier way to do it. All right, now short run and long run. So the difference between short run and long run is that in short run, we keep capital fixed, whereas in the long run, capital is variable. So that is the difference between short and long. Okay, so the short run cost function is V K1 plus WL, where K1 is fixed. Okay, so cost function is Vk plus WL, whereas short run cost is Vk bar plus WL. So this is the difference between short and long. So you cannot change your capital in short run. That's the idea. So imagine that that you're constructing this road and you've hired some machinery and you've hired some labor. Suddenly there's a demand to increase the pace of production. Let's say, suppose the bureaucrat or the minister says that no, you are very behind deadline, we want this done faster. So you have to increase the pace. Now overnight you cannot hire machinery extra. So what you'll do is you'll hire more labor. Okay. On the other hand, let's say there's a lockdown. So you are informed that you cannot do any sort of construction activity. So now that you have already rented some machinery, you cannot just say sell it again. You cannot go in the market and sell it back. Or if you have taken loan for that machinery, you cannot say, okay, I am not going to pay the EMIs for the loan or the installments for the loan. What the only thing you can do is you can fire all the labor. You can refuse to pay them their wages. So you can fire all labor, but the capital remains fixed. So either way, when you want to increase or reduce production, in the short run, you cannot change your capital value. But let's say the lockdown keeps extending forever. So in that case, maybe you can get rid of excess machinery. So the short run costs will have capital fixed. So suppose these are different quantity levels that you have to suppose different isoquants pertaining to Q0, Q1 and Q2. So in long run, what we do is we find the tangency position. We find the tangency position. So this is going to be the ideal for long run. For Q0, for Q1, it's going to be this one, and for Q2, it's going to be this one. So these are the different ideal points for Q0, Q1, and Q2. Let me write this in different colors that would be easier on the eye. So this is for Q2, Q1, and this is for Q2. Right? But in the short run, I cannot change capital. So the only thing I can change is labor. So if I have to produce Q0 quantity in short run, the only way to do it is hire this much amount of labor. So in long run, I would have picked this much amount of labor, but I am picking this much amount of labor in the short run. So let's say this point is A and this point is B. So which do you think is going to be higher, to produce quantity Q0 at A or to produce quantity Q0 at B? Which is going to be larger of the two? A or B?
B.
B is going to be larger. Very good. Okay. Now consider Q2. So I want to produce this much amount, hiring this much amount of labor. But because I have fixed amount of capital, the amount that I have to engage is going to be L2, right? So I'm going to hire more labor than I would have wanted. So suppose this point is C and this point is D. So which do you think is higher now, C or D?
D.
D. Very good. So again, it's the short run cost which is going to be higher, which is very simple to say, because if D would have been cheaper than C, then long run maybe you would have picked D, because in the long run you can pick the entire ISO quant. Nobody is stopping you to pick any point. But in the short run, in this entire ISO quant Q2, the only point you can pick is D because your capital is fixed at Q. Okay, so if it were the other way around, that D would have been cheaper, then why are you taking point C in long run? So the long run costs are optimal, yet it is not realistically feasible that you change capital every day, right? So capital cannot be so flexible. So you, for some time period, you have to fix some amount of capital and work with it. So that's non-optimality of short-run costs. So the short-run cost curve and cost curves, they look like this. So if this is your linear cost curve, the short-run cost curves are going to look like this for different levels of capital. So if you have level of capital K0, it's going to look like this. So it's going to be equal to the long-run cost. The C is long-run cost. These are different short-run costs for different levels of fixed capital. Okay, so you can have capital level 10 or 20 or 40, whatever the fixed level is. I don't know what that is. But the point is, for different levels of fixed costs, so let's just focus on this SCK0. So for all quantities less than Q0, short-run cost is higher. For all quantities greater than Q0, also it is higher. But at Q0, it is equal. So Q0 is basically that quantity at which the long run level of capital is equal to K. So if you assume, let's say, some level of quantity, some level of capital K0, and you hire that amount of capital, luckily it so happens that you have to produce quantity Q0. Okay, you do not know quantity to begin with. The problem is you do not know before you start producing, you start manufacturing, you do not know exactly what quantity you are going to face, right? So suppose you are setting up a manufacturing plant for cars. It takes about 5 to 10 years to set up the entire manufacturing facility. So within that, but the actual demand will become clear only once your car hits the market. So till that point, you cannot predict exact quantity. Now, with some luck, maybe you predicted some quantity Q0, and that is the exact quantity of demand that you're facing. So in that case, your short run cost is equal to what it would have been in long run. But in all other situations, short run cost is going to be different than long run cost. But that's something which is in the nature of time, that we do not know the future. If we could predict the future, then definitely we would have always chosen the exact amount of capital that we put. But unfortunately, we do not have that benefit. So this short run costs are going to be tangential to your long run cost function, tangency at one point. So for different level of capital, it's going to be tangent at different levels of quantity. Okay, and this is your non-linear cost function. Again, similar pattern. It is always above the long run cost, but tangent at just one point. So that's the nature of short run cost, long run cost functions. So let's look at this problem and try to find how to find your short and long run cost functions. Sorry, yeah, short run cost function and other things. So a firm is producing hockey sticks with this production function Q equals to root 2 KL, 2 root KL. Okay, so production function is Q equals to 2 root KL. In the short run, the fixed amount of capital is K equals to 100. The rental rate is V equals to 1 and wage rate is W equals to 4, right? So you have rental rate R1, wage rate W4. So we have to find the short run cost function. Okay, so now K is 100. So what you can do is you can directly substitute this value of K here. So what you get is Q equals to 2 root 100 times L, which implies that Q by 2 is equals to under root 100 L, which implies Q square by 4 equals to 100 L, which implies that amount of labor in short run is equal to Q square by 400. So the short run cost is W time labor plus R times capital. So this is going to be 4 times Q square by 400 plus R is 1 times K is 100. So this becomes Q square by 100 plus 100. So this becomes Q square by 100 plus 100. Now that you have the short run cost, you see finding short run cost is very easy. You just substitute the value of K, find the required value of L. So you get L as a function of quantity. You substitute it back in the cost function, keeping your capital constant, and you get your cost function, short run cost function. Once you get short run cost, you can easily find average cost. Average cost is short run cost by quantity Q. So that is Q by 100 plus 100 by Q. And your marginal cost is DSC by DQ. So that is going to be Q by 50.